This is The Week on Word, a podcast featuring a roundup of the most interesting, informative, and entertaining interviews from Word Radio. You can listen to WURD Radio anytime, anywhere on WURDradio.com and the Word Radio app. Give us a play and download us today. In this episode, Casey Peeks is the Senior Director for Early Childhood Policy at the Center for American Progress. Peeks spoke with Dr. James Peterson on Evening WURDs to discuss a recent report which breaks down how every citizen, including Pennsylvanians, will be impacted if Head Start were eliminated completely. And national security expert Malcolm Nance joined Solomon Jones on Wake Up With WURD to discuss the Trump administration's potential withdrawal from negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. But first, Sean Vereen is the president and CEO of Heights Philadelphia, an organization dedicated to giving low-income communities resources they need for economic mobility. Vereen spoke with Tonya Pendleton on Reality Check.
A couple of surveys that have come out lately have had some very interesting results. Now, researchers at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia are investigated why Philadelphians have such a difficult time climbing up the economic ladder. And one of the reasons was because of gig work and instability and not being able to have a consistent income. And then recently we found out, which probably no surprise to many of you, that Blacks are still the largest racial group in the city. And also, they're saying that poverty rates are declining. So we've got someone here who's going to unpack all those things. Sean Vereen, he is the president and CEO of Heights Philadelphia. It's an organization dedicated to giving young folks, especially Black, Latino, and first-generation of college students, a leg up. How you doing, Sean? Good morning.
Good. Good morning.
So the thing that's interesting to me, and I know that the Economic Mobility Summit is happening right now. This is the second day of it. And the Federal Reserve, this is behind this. And you can tell us a little bit more about that. But this idea that people are still struggling to get up the ladder because they can't even really get a stable income based on what their circumstances might be or what their education might be. What can you tell us about all of the above?
Well, I think let's start with the big headline there, right? Which is that, ultimately the economy here does not provide enough opportunity for our citizens and our people. And we have to get much more purposeful. And I think, that's the reason why I'm here. I don't think things get solved in the boardrooms and in the conferences, but the decision makers are here, and we have to think differently about how we are focusing, particularly from our perspective at Heights, at young people, and are they really being connected to opportunities? And we have to do a better job of having an economy that not just creates jobs that exist and give you maybe not even a living wage, but ones that will lead to opportunities that you can live and thrive on.
Yeah, there was an interesting part of this survey that said, and they surveyed about 500 people in Greater Philadelphia, that said that there's a gap between people who can receive benefits and those who, even though they are working and not receiving benefits because they don't qualify, they still don't have enough money to meet their basic needs. And so that is really kind of a daunting proposition if you're out here working and you're not able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there is one, I think that people accessing their benefits, right, which is their right, and it is a part of their opportunity to be able to support themselves, is very confusing. And we don't really have everyone who has access to those actually using them. And then I think the other piece is, and everybody knows this, right, the cost of living has significantly increased. You most likely need a salary somewhere around $60,000 a year to live decently in the city. Housing has become really expensive. Food is expensive. Your daily life is more expensive. And we are not providing enough job opportunities. And most importantly, we're not connecting the people who need them the most to the opportunities that exist now. Right. And we have to do a better job of that. We have to make it easier for people to access their benefits, as like you were laying out. We have to make it more clear and get people more prepared for the opportunities that exist here.
And I'm assuming that is where Heights Philadelphia comes in. So tell us what you do there and what your role is at the Economic Mobility Summit.
Yeah, so for Heights, we are an economic mobility catalyst. And what that means is that we are trying to get young people from middle school all the way, whether they're graduating from high school or graduating from college, connected to careers that will provide economic mobility. That means advising, and we are in 25 schools in the school district. It means enrichment activities. So we have career pathways that connect folks to everything from financial services and business to technology to human services and the like. And that we also provide community and connection to others, right? You know, there are not enough people who are focused on young folks and providing communities that expose them to things that are outside their neighborhoods, right? So our job is to create that path. And then here at the summit, you know, we want to make sure that, one, we're learning, right? We're an organization that is always trying to get better at what we do. We now serve 3,300 students across the city. We want to get to 5,000. We have a belief that every young person who graduates from Philadelphia public schools should be connected to an educational or workforce opportunity. We advise and support. We give out $1 million worth of scholarships and stipends. So at this summit, it's really important, you know, with all the bigwigs in the room, right, is that we have folks who are really focused on trying to bring resources to the ground to kids. So, and yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, and I would just say that, you know, this is the moment where we're in these spaces to really advocate for young people, and that we have to get our act together, right? I mean, all these folks, nonprofits, institutions, businesses, we have to do better by people in our community, in our neighborhoods. So, you know, that's what we're trying to represent here.
So I'm going to ask you a question that you're probably not expecting. What you do is worthy. And I talk to a lot of people in nonprofits, and obviously what they do to try to make up for these inequities is admirable. However, is this just always going to be an uphill battle because these kids are not getting what they need in the first place, particularly because many of them are dealing with the outcome of systemic racism?
Yeah. I think it is always an uphill battle, but I think there are two things that we have to understand, right? That there were people who had less than we did and achieved amazing things, right? If you look at our history in this city itself, right, that there are people who are under worse conditions, who created economic opportunity, who created civil rights opportunities, who changed the landscape of how things work. So yes, it is an uphill battle, and that systemic inequality is real. But it is not something that is set in stone. Even if it's been going on for generations, there are ways for us to change it. Now, that does mean that we as nonprofits, we can't just be simply providing charity, right? Our job is not just to, you know, hopefully pluck the one kid who can deal with our resources. One of the reasons we did what we have done, we've merged as an organization, we serve more kids now because we're trying to have a systemic impact. We want to get to 5,000 kids. That's not everybody, but that's a significant amount of students who will help change the trajectory of the city. We also are trying to hold institutions to account. We just launched a partnership with Temple, where we promised 125 seventh graders that if they stick to school, if they keep a good GPA, and that they get engaged with our resources, that they will have a scholarship at Temple when they get to college. And we're going to do that every year. So there are going to be 900 students in this program and that first group of students that we made the promise to. That's Temple making a long-term commitment to kids in North Philadelphia. So we have to do things differently and better, right? And we have to be able to push and we have to be able to organize. So yes, there are all kinds of things that everybody who's listening to this knows that are working against us. But they can be attacked if we actually are smart enough and engaged enough and in our community. And then we also hold people who have resources and power to account. You know, just like what you were talking about with the government, right? We have to demand something better for ourselves and particularly for our kids.
I mean, you know, as Frederick Douglass once said, power concedes nothing without a demand. But at the same time, it seems like, again, with the acknowledgement that the work that you do is worthy, the battle is always going to be the same when the systems are the same that make these inequities part of the system. And so how does it help make change or make a permanent change if we're not addressing those root causes as opposed to just helping these 5,000 kids that can certainly make a difference and certainly be uplifted out of poverty, but we're not addressing some of those root causes?
Well, I think you have to do both, right? I mean, you can't just simply help the kids and not think about the systems, right? And so part of what our work is to push those systems, right? Is to bring institutions in play. Like, we're not just trying to do programs. We're really trying to create pathways that will have a bigger impact than just the kids that we serve. And, the other piece is that this is not a thing that's going to be solved simply by heights, right? This will be solved when bigger institutions, our hospitals, our universities, our government, our businesses in this area, are really investing in young people. But look, our job is to advocate and push for those things, right? And to not just think that simply because we have a really great program that we're solving the problem, right? So I don't disagree with you at all. We have to push for those things, and that people in different eras have done that thing and have changed structures and systems. These things can be changed, right? And there'll be new problems for us to solve, but we can address the things that are in front of us. It does not, this is the poorest big city in the whole country. And yet we live in the richest country that ever has been. We are in the richest part of the country that ever has been. There are the resources to help each other, right? And then that's the common cause that we're trying to push for.
Well said. Sean Vereen, President and CEO of Heights Philadelphia. Thank you for joining us today. And where can people interact with you? So if they are interested in getting their kids, grandkids into the program, what do they need to do?
www.heights.org. That's how you can get in touch with us. And there are a couple of things. Get your kids involved with our work. We serve a lot of students across many different schools, and we have a lot of programs that are open over the course of the school year and the summer. And we also just need people to work with young folks. And we are looking for volunteers. This is not just the solution for all the powerful people I was just talking about. This is a solution for our community. You have skills and opportunity and things to provide to young people. And one of the things that will change things is community and investment. So if you want to volunteer, you want to get involved, www.heights.org.
Wonderful. Sean, thank you so much. We appreciate the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me on time.
You're listening to The Week on Word.
Hi, I'm Tonya Pendleton, the host of Reality Check, airing Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Word Radio. Join me as I talk to newsmakers and noisemakers in politics, sports, entertainment, culture, and tech. We'll take deep dives into stories from Philadelphia and beyond. Tune in at 10 a.m. Monday through Thursday on Word Radio for your daily Reality Check.
This is The Week on Word, a podcast highlighting the top conversations on Word Radio. Make sure you look for and follow WURD Radio on social media. Up next, national security expert Malcolm Nance joined Solomon Jones on Wake Up With WURD.
We are joined by Malcolm Nance. He is an author. He is also a former naval intelligence, counterterrorism, and intelligence officer specializing in the Middle East. He's a combat veteran, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape expert, and a historian. He joins us this morning to talk about the peace negotiations for the war in Ukraine. Malcolm, good morning.
Good morning. Well, you missed a key part of my biography there.
What did I miss? You fought in Ukraine.
I was a member of the Ukrainian Army in the International Legion for almost a year.
Yeah. So, that is a key part, especially given what we're talking about this morning. So I'm watching these negotiations and hearing what the Trump administration is saying. And I wonder if you're feeling the same thing I am. What are you seeing when you hear the Trump administration talk about their role in these peace negotiations?
Well, I'll be quite frank. I'm a Philadelphian like you guys. All I hear is an attempted fraud. Donald Trump has been on a holy war against President Vladimir Zelensky ever since way back in 2017, when he wouldn't implicate Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in a plot that he thought up using Rudy Giuliani to make Ukraine start a false investigation of Joe Biden. That got him his first impeachment, you might recall. Mm-hmm. So Trump, when it came to Ukraine in the run up to the election, I was screaming to the high heavens, along with most people in national security, that he was going to go on a revenge tour. But there's also another facet you need to understand. Ever since 1988, Donald Trump has been on this crusade to somehow get himself the Nobel Peace Prize. And when Barack Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in his first year as president, just on the basis of hope and change, Trump became insanely obsessed with this. So this campaign to get Ukraine to surrender, which is what they're trying to do. They're not trying to negotiate a peace deal. They're trying to get Ukraine to surrender on Moscow's terms so that Trump can get a Nobel Peace Prize. It's laughable.
So one of the things that they're asking Ukraine to do is to just give up Crimea. Crimea is the first place that Russia invaded, I believe, back in 2014 and just took it. And Ukraine has maintained that that's their land. You know, what do you think about the push to get them to just give up Crimea?
Well, you know, I'm going to give people who are older like us who would listen to this channel an analogy we could understand. This would be the equivalent after Pearl Harbor of the United States saying to Japan, you know, or Britain or somebody coming to the United States and saying, hey, listen, just surrender Hawaii, Midway Island, the Philippines, you know, and all of your interest in Asia. Just surrender it to the Japanese so we can have peace. I mean, it's laughable. Russia invaded Ukraine the first time in 2014, and they did it with such, you know, and interestingly, they did it with the assistance of Donald Trump's former and current campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who was on the payroll of the pro-Moscow Ukrainian government, being paid millions in cash in secret, which he was convicted of and, you know, money laundering here in the United States with that money. So, you know, to come and say to Ukraine, just surrender 20% of your nation, including places we failed to take in the invasion in 2022, with Crimea being the most important, Ukraine is never going to accept that. And Trump and Rubio and Steve Witkoff, his real estate buddy, have been in Moscow, taking Moscow's points, and they are coming back and saying, if you don't surrender, we're going to do the Goodfellas thing to you, right? It's a really bad, you know, it's a fine country you got here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. So Trump is demanding they surrender 20% of their nation. It's like somebody storming your house and saying, I'm taking the front porch, the living room, and the kitchen, and you can have everything upstairs. It's again, laughable.
Yeah. So Volodymyr Zelensky has said, we are not going to give up Crimea. That's against our Constitution. And the Trump administration has said they are going to walk away from the negotiations. So what happens from there? Because that looks like that's where it's headed. So where does it go from there?
But you need to step back and think about what Trump says when he goes, I'm going to walk away from the negotiations. Negotiations for what? To surrender Ukraine to Russia? Trump is not, okay, stipulate this, everybody. We all know this is a fact, right? I've written 4 New York Times bestselling books about Trump and his relationship with Russia and Russian intelligence. Donald Trump is the most documented liar in American history. That is a fact, right? 30,000, 33,000 in his presidency, possibly 25 to 30,000 more since he left presidency and has come back. So can you trust his word of a man that is the most documented pathological liar in American history? So what happened here was Trump started these negotiations for the benefit of Trump and access to all this crazy hundreds of billions of dollars of Russian oligarch dictator money that he wants access to. So who's negotiating in good faith? Certainly not Donald Trump. And certainly Ukraine is fighting and winning on the battlefield. Ignore everything you hear from Donald Trump about him wanting to stop the killing. The people who are being killed are Russian forces at a ratio of 10 to 20 to 1. The Ukrainians are very good at fighting. But, you know, they're trying to maintain 1,000-mile long, actually 800-mile long battlefront. And now Donald Trump is intending not to walk away from negotiations. He intends to surrender and remove all U.S. money, all U.S. military aid, all U.S. intelligence support from Ukraine if he doesn't get his way. And remember, this really goes back to him trying to smear Joe Biden. It's just revenge. The same way he's trying to get rid of the Civil Rights Act of 1965. He's going to do to Ukraine what he does to everybody who crosses him, which is he's going to betray them and stab them in the back.
We're talking with Malcolm Nance. He's a national security expert, fought for a year in Ukraine, in this war between Ukraine and Russia. So can Ukraine win? Can they maintain the defense of their country if the United States pulls out all of its funding and all of its assistance?
They can. It'll just take longer. You need to understand some things about Russia first. Russia is not the insanely rich country that you're thinking of. It's got a lot of land. It's got a lot of man mass. I've been criticized by their propaganda arm, Russia Today, for saying Russia's really a trailer park with atomic bombs. The average Russian citizen lives close to poverty. Even though the Soviet Union collapsed and brought in all this money, the money went to the richest people in Moscow and St. Petersburg and the big cities. It did not go out to the Russian countryside. The average Russian is fighting in Ukraine to earn money. They say so. Well, I've captured Russian soldiers, and they say, well, I wanted to get a house in the Donbass or a house in Crimea, which they said we would get for free if we fight. And if they die, their families get $60,000. There's a lot of scams out there where women are marrying Russian soldiers. The Ukrainians are fighting for their lives, for their families, for their land. And they don't have time to waste on Donald Trump's games here. Can Ukraine win? Yes. Without U.S. support? Yes. It will take longer, but now the Europeans are stepping up. Because by the way, can I point something out to you? Ukraine, yes. If you drive from end to end at 70 miles per hour, nonstop, it is 18 hours from the Polish border to the Russian border on the east. The war is only occurring in that last 30 minutes of the drive along the Russian border. They kicked out Russian forces that were all over, the northern part of the country. So Trump tries to get you to think, because he lives in a fantasy world, him and J.D. Vance, that Ukraine is destroyed. It's utterly destroyed. It's not. It's an insanely beautiful country. It reminds me of Germany and France in parts. It has 1/4 of the world's wheat. All of Sub-Saharan Africa eats off of Ukrainian wheat. This is what Russia is going for. That and stealing washing machines, which is not a joke. They actually steal every washer and dryer they get because they don't have those things in Russia. So, yes, Ukraine can win.
So let me ask you this, and I think it's a good question. What happens? Why should Americans period, and then African Americans especially, be concerned about what happens with Ukraine?
Well, first off, my family has served in the armed forces of the United States nonstop since April 1864. All right. We're closing on 160 some odd years. My niece just retired from the Navy. Nonstop. There has been a Nance in the armed forces of the United States. And when those two slaves, my great-great-granduncle and my great-great-grandfather, ran away from slavery, it was not ideal conditions for us, right? But they believed in the American experiment. They believed that America would progress and that their children, their grandchildren, great-grandchildren would have the values that rights are afforded in the United States and the opportunities by serving in the armed forces. We have African-American young men and women right now on the Polish-Ukrainian border, in the 82nd Airborne, and the other U.S. forces that are stationed throughout Poland, the same way we had during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s in Germany. If Ukraine falls or it's given away by Donald Trump, Russia will invade Poland. They will invade Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Your nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters who are in the armed forces of the United States who are black, who make up 43% of the armed forces, they will be fighting Russia. So is it easier just to give Ukraine 50-year-old weapon systems, which, by the way, they are decisively beating their ass with? Or will we just rely on Donald Trump's insane philosophy of surrendering to Russia and giving up a country that has better American values than anyone in the Trump White House? I'm not joking about that. They are better Americans than anybody that's in there, because they are not ripping us off and trying to destroy the fabric of American democracy. They're upholding these American values and defending their country. We seem to have forgotten that.
That's Malcolm Nance. He is a former Naval Intelligence Counterterrorism officer speaking. He worked in the Middle East and also fought in Ukraine for a year. He's also a New York Times bestselling author. Joined us to talk about the national security implications of what's happening in Ukraine.
You're listening to The Week on Word.
Good morning. It's Solomon Jones, host of the hottest morning show on radio, Wake Up With WURD. Listen weekdays from 7 to 10 a.m. for laughter, for fun, for politics, for family, for more than you can imagine. Check it out every day, Monday through Friday. Wake Up With WURD on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURD.
You're listening to the Week on Word podcast. To learn more about our programming, visit WURDradio.com. Our last conversation for this episode features Casey Peaks, who joined Dr. James Peterson on Evening WURDs.
It is time for our Centering Progress segment. I want to welcome back to the program Ms. Casey Peaks, the Senior Director for Early Childhood Policy at the Center for American Progress. Prior to joining American Progress, Ms. Peaks served as a professional staff member focused on early childhood and child welfare, that is, under Representative Bobby Scott from Virginia, where she worked on legislation related to affordable child care and universal preschool. Casey Peaks, welcome back to Evening WURDs.
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back. Wish I was back under better circumstances.
So do I, Casey. So do I. I had a subject matter expert on this program a few months back who said that Head Start was literally the most successful anti-poverty program in American history. I know you study these things very, very closely from a policy perspective. Can you help our listeners understand why that statement is not hyperbole?
Yeah, it's not hyperbole. This is a comprehensive program, and it was founded under President Johnson's War on Poverty in the midst of the Civil Rights Movement in 1965. So Head Start is actually celebrating its 60th year this year. But I think when a lot of people think about Head Start, they think of a preschool program, and it definitely provides educational and preschool services, but it does so much. I think when you think of it as the most successful anti-poverty program, it's because it provides nutritional services. It provides developmental screenings. It provides health services for families. It's really a two-generational approach. So while getting those kids ready for kindergarten and to have a successful life going into adulthood, it's also helping parents get access to job training, housing supports, and any other social services. So it does so much for the entire family when enrolled in Head Start that it's really remarkable the impact it has. It increases graduation rates, increases college attainment, and improves outcomes for students when they have been enrolled in Head Start.
Casey, remind me again why this iteration of our federal government is trying to wind this down and or get rid of it?
They actually don't have a clear explanation as to why. The first hint of this was in Project 2025, and they didn't really give a strong explanation in that, policy playbook from the conservatives on why they wanted to. And then most recently, in the past week, we've seen leaked documents from the Trump administration that the president is proposing to eliminate it. And they don't really have a strong reason either. They just say that they want to, it's in line with administration's proposals and priorities to return education back to the states. But as I just mentioned, I'm not going to argue if that's a worthy cause or not, although, we don't agree. But Head Start is so much more than an education program. Like you said, it's an anti-poverty comprehensive services program. So I have yet to see a strong argument or reasoning from this administration. Not even one that I disagree with, just like a strong reason, period, of why they would eliminate.
Yeah, Casey, I'm going to go on record as saying that this administration, the Trump administration, does not care about poor people and certainly does not care about poor children. That is the rationale for eliminating a program. Again, I would love for you to share with our listeners just how many people are impacted by this. Almost 800,000 children in the last year alone impact of school. Can you talk a little bit about the scale and scope of the impact of Head Start? Then I want to bring it home for Pennsylvania. But first, let's talk about the national impact of a program like Head Start.
Yeah, the national impact, like you mentioned, nearly 800,000 children across the country are enrolled in this program right now. Since its founding 60 years ago, nearly 40 million children have gone through the Head Start program. And that's including, Senator Raphael Warnock from Georgia. He went through the Head Start program as a child. And the Center for American Progress just released a new report last week that shows that 88% of congressional districts across the country have at least one Head Start grantee. So Head Start is in almost every single community across the country. It has a really, really wide reach. And also tribal communities get access to Head Start too. There's a separate program just for tribal programs so that they can the program in their communities as well.
So you have to, in a minute, I want you to explain this interactive map, because I love when CAP does this. I love when CAP does this, just like how much data you all collate and collect and make easily accessible. But the title of the article that you co-authored with Ali Schneider is 5 Things to Know About Head Start. Let's make sure that we let the listeners know, what are the 5 things that they should know about Head Start?
Yes. The first one is that it's serving communities, hundreds of thousands of families across the country. Like I mentioned, 80%. This
ain't some boutique federal program.
No, it is widespread. And it's run by local organizations, whether that's school districts, small community-based organizations, faith-based organizations. It's really a federal to local program.
Right. So, Casey, I hate to interrupt you. Thank you for making that point. This is also the reason why returning it back to the states is nonsensical, right? Because it's already more local than the states in terms of the organizations that execute the policy and distribute the funds of actual. It already is in the states. It already is in the municipality, in the rural areas. It already is where it's supposed to be. So returning it to the states doesn't make any sense. You're just taking away the funding that the states and the cities are already using.
And this isn't like a one-size-fits-all program. The reason it's federal to local is that these local organizations that get their grant can talk to parents, can talk to community leaders. In fact, they have to do a community needs assessment to figure out how to structure the program to best fit the unique and individual needs of the community that they're serving. So a program that's in Philadelphia is going to look completely different than a Head Start program that's in Alaska, as it should. Those are 2 communities that have vastly different needs. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the hallmarks of the program, and it has been since its founding. So that's the first thing to know about Head Start.
Wow.
That it serves families in every corner of this country. And the second one's related to that is that it relies on federal dollars to serve local needs. So that when a grantee gets that funding in Philadelphia, they can really look at what that community in Philadelphia needs. And it can be even hyper-local, like a program in West Philadelphia might look different than a program in North Philadelphia based on what the community services are around, based on what parents in that community need. And that's really the benefit of the program. And I think that makes Head Start really strong.
Yeah. I mean, that second point is so important, and you're right, related to the first, but also, again, reflects this administration's ire for nonprofit organizations, for school districts, really, right? You're going to hamstring school districts in terms of serving the students in their communities. I mean, it's just, again, unconscionable. We're up to number 3 now, I think.
Yes. Number 3 is that Head Start, when it was first founded, was a preschool program. So for 4-year-olds, but since its 6-year history, we now have early Head Start. So the third thing to know is that early Head Start provides a critical supply of infant and toddler care. If you're a parent of a young child, you know that it's extremely, extremely difficult and extremely expensive to find care for infant and toddler care. And also, to your previous guest, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, who was talking about the maternal health crisis, early Head Start also serves 12,000 expecting parents, giving them prenatal health services and education, things like how to prepare for your baby's arrival, things to make sure that you have a healthy and safe.
The things that reduce the infant mortality rate.
Yes.
And I hate to be histrionic here, but early Head Start addresses things, not at scale always, but addresses those kind of maternal mortality rates, infant mortality rates, but also getting children early into the educational frame also addresses our literacy crisis. As you know, because you're an alum from Penn, you've been around Philadelphia long enough, we have a literacy crisis here in the city of Philadelphia. Early Head Start, getting to them early is one of the ways that you stave off and mitigate the literacy crisis, which continues to plague cities like Philadelphia. Number 4, Miss Casey.
Number 4 is that Head Start supports vulnerable populations. And I think everyone thinks of Head Start as an anti-poverty program, and it definitely really focuses on serving children living in poverty. But what a lot of people also don't know is Head Start requires that 10% of slots go to children with disabilities, regardless of income. And it's because they have the supports in place to have those developmental screenings and provide those developmental services for young children with disabilities. It's really hard to find childcare for young children with disabilities because they have needs that not every childcare provider can meet.
Yeah, it's hard to chronicle this administration's disdain for people who have other abilities or disabilities, because when all these Department of Education cuts, the first things that go are the capacity for the federal government to kind of oversee the extent to which schools and other facilities are actually equitable and accessible for students with disabilities, or have the resources to manage students that have different ways of learning and things like that. I mean, what is going to happen to those populations when these resources go away?
I'm really nervous for what happens, because I think a lot of people are like, well, if Head Start's eliminated, then these parents will have to turn towards childcare, which is really expensive. And I push back as these are the most vulnerable families in our country. They're not going to turn to the childcare market that costs $11,000 a year. What they're going to do is they're going to quit their jobs.
Yep.
They're not going to turn to childcare, or they're going to potentially send their child to an unsafe environment because they can't afford anything else. These are not families that are like, well, now I'm going to have to figure out how to, spend $12,000 a year on childcare. That's not an option for them. Head Start's completely free. And if they don't have access to not just the childcare and education, but the health screenings within 45 days of enrolling, every child in Head Start gets developmental screening. They get their vision checked, their hearing checked, making sure they're developmentally on track. Mm-hmm. Those are not services that a lot of Head Start families are going to be able to access without Head Start. So what's going to happen is a lot more vulnerable children will be without support. So
once again, add to the benefits of the Head Start program that it helps to manage, the poorest and most vulnerable folks in our healthcare crisis. In this country. Being proactive about that is very, very important. Number 5 might be my most important one, just because the federal government is saying it's going to return it back to the states. They're so tautological in their reasoning. I don't even know if they understand this, Casey. Just to be clear, I'm not sure if the folks who are making these decisions understand point number 5. But let's share with our listeners what the 5th thing is that people need to know about Head Start.
The 5th one, I think you're right, is really important, and I don't think it's something that a lot of people understand. The 5th one is that states depend on Head Start to fund preschool and early learning programs. I think this is a really important one because it's federal to local. Head Start might not show up in your state or governor's budget. But what does happen if a governor is saying, I want to make preschool universally available, they're budgeting knowing how many children are served by federal dollars. Mm-hmm. So if you live in a state where they're like, we can serve up to this many children at this income level, they calculated that because they know that the federal government is handling a share of that. I think the most shocking example is West Virginia. Mm-hmm. West Virginia is in the top 5 states for 4-year-olds attending preschool, top 5. Mm-hmm. But about 70% of those slots are in Head Start programs. So they have a fully integrated state preschool program with like school districts and Head Start. 70% of their preschool classrooms are Head Start.
So Casey, you mentioned West Virginia, but I would put Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana and any number of states into that kind of upside down kind of context. These are all states overwhelmingly voted for this administration. Are people, from your perspective, are people connecting the dots? Like, do folks understand what the consequences are of Head Start going away in states that are quote unquote red states? That's not a political question either, Casey. I'm just curious is if the electorate is even aware that you have voted for an administration, particularly for, I hate to call them the poorest states in the nation, but the states that rely the most on federal support are oftentimes the most pro-Trump states in the union. Do you get the sense that people are aware of this in any way, as some of these things are being threatened or vulnerable to being on the chopping block of this particular administration?
To be honest, I don't think so. One, I don't think people understand the full scope of what Head Start does. And I think even some of the people that do understand that, in their mind, it would be so catastrophic should Head Start be eliminated. And it would be. It would be catastrophic to families across the country. They don't even think that it's the realm of possibility. So there are some people who are like, I've seen the proposal, but that could never happen because it's had historical bipartisan support, and it has. But what I'm pushing back on is that this is not a typical time in our country. This is not this ain't business as usual. It's not. No, this is not business as usual. So I am urging people that if it's in Project 2025, if the administration is taking actions to do something, you should believe them. If they're saying that they're going to eliminate Head Start, believe them.
Wow, Casey. So let's talk about this map. The children and families across the nation rely on Head Start services. This is figure 1 in the article, folks. You should check out the article. It's an incredible article. It's called 5 Things to Know About Head Start, co-authored by Miss Casey Peaks, who we have right here, and Allie Schneider, both at the Center for American Progress. Casey, I love when you all do this. I love when you all aggregate the data, visualize it, and make it turnkey accessible. So talk a little bit about what this map is, how people can use it, and why it's important for a deeper understanding for all of us with respect to Head Start.
Yes, I love this map. Highly recommend that everyone take a look at this piece. But I think right now, what is most impactful about this piece, it's a map of the United States. It has every single congressional district broken out. And when you're on the map and you scroll over a congressional district, it'll pop up with the member of Congress's name, how many Head Start and early Head Start slots are funded in that district, how many grants that district gets from Head Start, and also the amount of funding. And I think that's really critical because even though we know that the president is likely going to propose to eliminate Head Start, Head Start cannot be eliminated without Congress. So I would recommend that people go to their map, find their congressional district, neighboring congressional districts, and find that data and call up your member of Congress. For example, I pulled up Dwight Evans. Dwight Evans has the highest number of slots for the entire state of Pennsylvania.
That's right here in Philadelphia, folks. For those keeping score, that's right here in the city of Philadelphia. Go ahead, Casey.
There are 4,600 funded slots in his district alone. So I'm not even talking about the entire country. I'm just talking about in your city alone.
That's right.
Over 4,600 children will instantly lose access to these critical services. And one important thing to note is this is based on the address of grantees. So there might be even more slots within the district if there's a grantee who might be based in North Philly, but is running programs in,
in some other area of the city.
So this is based off of the address of the grantee. So for example, if the school district in Philadelphia is a grantee, it'll be based on where their address is, not where their program sites are, but it's still incredibly helpful to tell members of Congress. And I think it's also just helpful to know that about your community, of how many people in your community are benefiting from this program.
Yeah, I'm looking at my community, 873 funded HS or EHS slots. The funding amount, $15,500,000 plus across 3 grants, which again, when that goes away from a community that's trying to serve the poorest and most vulnerable people in it, it can turn a budget upside down. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing I want folks to hear from me right now. Tax dollars are your dollars, okay? It's not like the government's not giving you anything. We just came past tax day. I mean, do you want your tax dollars to go to help poor kids, or do you want it to go to tax breaks for Elon Musk? That's not Casey Peaks from the Center of American Progress asking that question. That's me, folks, asking that question. Casey, we got about a minute left. Or do we miss anything here? Are there any other takeaways you want to leave with our audience about this challenge? Anything that they can do in their own communities? I'm assuming they can use the map and reach out to their representative directly and say, hey, protect Head Start. Anything else you would advise individuals who are hearing this unfold about what we can do to resist it?
I think another really important thing is to keep your eyes on what's happening in your community right now. Last week, a Head Start program in Washington State had to close because even though Head Start is not eliminated, the Trump administration is slow walking getting the dollars out the door. In fact, compared to this time last year, there are $1 billion that should be in programs that the administration is holding up. So compared to last year, Pennsylvania is missing $15 million.
Wow.
From this point last year. So definitely we don't want the program to be eliminated, and contact your members about that. But if you hear that Head Start programs in your neighborhood are not receiving the funding, that is like red alert, contact your member of Congress.
There's more than one way to destroy a federal program.
Exactly, because we have seen that this administration is taking actions to dismantle things that really are the job of Congress. Mm-hmm. And they're doing what they can with or without Congress. So I would pay attention to that. The elimination is a huge issue, but they're hurting programs now. There are 400 kids in Washington State who no longer have Head Start because of this administration.
Ms. Casey Peaks, thank you so much for your work there at CAP and your work on this particular issue, so important to our community. And also thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
You're listening to The Week on Word. Stay connected on the go with the new and improved WURD Radio app. Search WURD Radio in your app store. Stream every show with increased clarity. Easily access WURD TV, EcoWord, and Livelihood. Remember, Black Media Matters. Get the new and improved WURD Radio app today. Available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Week on Word. Let's stay connected. Sign up for our newsletter and listen to us online at WURDradio.com and on the WURD Radio app.